Welcome to Sign High. I'm Milana Best.
Kia ora. My name is Mita Moses. This year we went to the Sign Language Interpreters Association of New Zealand conference. This conference is held every year. Interpreters receive updates on what's happening with interpreting in New Zealand and overseas.
Before we take a look at the Sign Language Interpreters Association of New Zealand conference, many people ask me what a sign language interpreter does and how they work for all of us. We have an interpreter here to explain to us today why she became an interpreter. Hi, we're here today to meet Tanya. Tanya is a sign language interpreter here in Whangarei. Can you explain to us about your role as an interpreter?
So, as an interpreter on the job, I pass the language and information between a deaf person and a hearing person. That's the shortest answer.
What ethnical obligations must all interpreters follow?
Yes, we do have to be really firm with our ethics because we're providing a service for one. It's also a deaf person's right to say whatever they like, similar to a hearing person. They can say whatever they like. I can't take from one person what they've said and decide it's a little bit rude and pretty it up. Or if the hearing person has saying something offensive to the deaf person, I'm not allowed to change that at all. I just have to pass it on as is. So that's an ethical issue, I guess, and impartiality is one of those ethics. Whatever anybody says, I just pass the information from one person to another without doing anything to it. I can't have my thoughts and feelings anywhere involved. I just put those to one side and pass the information from one person to each other, the language from one person to another. And it can be really difficult because sometimes you hear a deaf person say something, and if I were to have enough time, I might think, well, if that was me saying that, the hearing person might get upset. But on the other hand, if a hearing person were to say something that I'm actually aware of it being untrue, then I still have to pass that on as is. Impartiality, that's a really big and important ethic. Next on the list would be accuracy. Just making sure that you've caught everything that is being signed and are voicing it correctly. If I were to not be 100% sure, but carry on thinking that I'm saying the right thing, it will give the hearing person the wrong impression. On the other hand, if a doctor is using some language that is outside of what I know, I have to pause the interaction, ask for clarification. Because if I don't know what the hearing person's saying, there's no way that I can pass that on. It's very, very important to be able to show that accuracy is important, and the way we do that is to clarify with both parties all the time. We absolutely have to. Professionalism is another ethic that's on the list. Arriving late, it can be really difficult because it's already extra work for the hearing person to have to book an interpreter. They feel frustrated without not being able to speak directly to their deaf client. So we do try our best, but we are human. There are times if we arrive late, we can't help it. But we do have to try our best to be a good representation of the interpreting community. Confidentiality, of course, yes. If you were to ask me, have you seen so-and-so deaf person recently? And if I've seen them on the job, I would say quite directly, no, I haven't, because it's none of my business. I'm not passing on anybody else's information. If I were to tell you in depth about the deaf person's doctor's visit and that gets back to the person in particular, then that would be really, really bad. So I have to keep mum on everything in terms of what is said and where I'm going.
Now to Alana for a New Zealand Sign Language lesson.
Days: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, weekend, rainy, sunny, windy, cloudy, hot, cold, warm, today, spring, summer, autumn, winter. Today is beautiful and sunny. Oh no, Friday is meant to be rainy. This weekend is meant to be sunny and very hot. Winter's coming. I need to buy a warm jacket. Which is your favourite season? What are you doing on the weekend? My birthday's in autumn. It's always rainy and cold.
Keep it up. Don't forget to practice those sign language lessons. Welcome back. Now we have an interview with NZSL interpreter Tania.
What kind of challenges do you face on a daily basis?
It's a really good question about challenges. Maybe problems. Yeah, I would say challenges is probably a better word. Let's say before I get to a job, I guess the first step would be making sure that I have actually been booked. There are times when a deaf person might contact me and the booking's not in my diary. Sometimes I need to follow up with the hearing person, and that's not necessarily part of my job, but I do contact them and ask them very, very nicely if they have booked an interpreter. And another time might be if the hearing person is not aware of what my role is. They might say, oh, so you've come with your friend, but that's not really right. Another time might be a hearing person has spoken to me about their family member who has been learning sign language or asked me questions about how I became an interpreter, and I have to redirect them because they are here to see their deaf client or patient. So I usually say to hearing people, keep your eyes on the deaf person and your ears on the interpreter as a phrase. So hopefully over time that people will understand what that actually means. In terms of other challenges, sometimes the situation itself can be difficult if I'm not really sure of what's coming or haven't been given very much information, and I arrive thinking things are very cruisy, nice and easy, and halfway through the interview or setting, then I have a reaction to what has been said. I just have to keep going and keep a blank face and just keep passing the information on. It can be quite tough sometimes. Sometimes when the deaf person and hearing person have left the room, I know there's been one situation where I've just burst into tears because the information was so challenging. I think the biggest challenge is the lack of awareness about my role as an interpreter. Let's say a deaf person hasn't used interpreters all that much. If the doctor, say, was on the computer and a deaf person was to say to me, "Oh, hey, I like your dress, where did you get that from?" I'm not going to be able to answer that question. It would be rude to sign that without voicing. So I have to be very careful about managing people when I'm interpreting in a very nice way. Sometimes the hearing person might say, "Oh, can you say or tell so-and-so, can you ask so-and-so this question?" And it depends on the length of the meeting. If the relationship is very important, then there would be a chance for me to offer suggestions for that hearing person. And I might say to them, you can speak directly to that deaf person. A lot of the time it's just a little bit that they're not used to it. I feel like a coach sometimes, but yes, there are plenty of challenges.
Have you interpreted at some interesting venues?
I would say I've been everywhere from A to Z, and it has been pretty interesting. The zoo, for example, I've interpreted a tour with a group, and we've talked about the lion and the giraffes and all sorts of other animals. Other interesting places, as a woman, I might not go to a doctor and speak about men's issues. I've been involved in interactions about some health issues. Surgery. I've actually been in the theatre when a deaf person has had an operation on their eye, and I've been in the room, and it was very, very interesting. Other interesting places could be on the stage, where there is a huge audience of 5,000 to 10,000 people. Anzac Day, just recently, it was a place where I interpreted, and I felt really proud about interpreting at that particular event. If you've heard of TED Talks, there are huge audiences and the topics are always really interesting. I've interpreted there, but if we're talking about everyday appointments, GP visits at the hospitals, parent-teacher interviews at a school, staff meetings, I attend plenty of those, job interviews. And if we can go back and talk about challenges just for a moment, let's say a deaf person goes to a job interview. Maybe as an interpreter, I do a really great job and the information is all well transmitted, conveyed, but the deaf person doesn't get the job. It has to not affect me because I'm an impartial party and I'm just an interpreter.
Thank you for your time and coming to have an interview with us today.
You're welcome.
We have two students from Auckland University of Technology. the only sign language interpreter's degree course. There's only one based in Auckland, the whole of New Zealand, that's the only one.
What is your name?
So my name is Dale Thomas.
Do you have a name sign?
Sure do. My sign name is Dale.
What is your name sign?
It's a combination of two signs. I really like fast cars and I really like to swim. And so I got the movement from the fast cars and the motion of swimming, combined them to make my sign name.
Why did you want to study New Zealand Sign Language?
I come from a deaf family. My parents are deaf, and I actually had no interest in becoming a sign language interpreter. It was one day where I went to Te Whātearoa. I wanted to buy a t-shirt. That was it, just a t-shirt. And the lady sat me down for about 20 minutes and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about becoming an interpreter?" I said, "No." Sat me down, and by the end of that 20 minutes, I knew what I wanted to do.
So after training, what is your goal?
So first step is to become a qualified New Zealand Sign Language interpreter. I'm almost there, so I'm pretty excited about that. The next goal would be to give back to the deaf community. I really want to say thank you to everything they've provided me, and this would be a good chance to give back to them.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you, Dale. What is your name?
My name is Casey.
Do you have a sign name?
Yep, it's Casey, like this.
Oh. Oh, why?
Because when I'm thinking, I'm always going,
What made you want to study sign language?
So I think it began when I saw Jeremy on TV during the Christchurch earthquakes. And as well, I'd seen it a few other times. And so I thought, well, that was interesting. And I was in high school at the time. And so I looked up online and found some night classes and went from there.
What have you found the most interesting part of the course and the most challenging?
The most interesting would have to be the language, learning the language. You learn so much more at AUT than you do at just night classes, and it's been really interesting. There's so much more to it than what people think. And the most challenging would be doing the actual interpreting. It takes a lot of brain power to be able to take in one language and translate it in your head and then output it in another language while still listening to the first language at the same time.
How have your experiences been with the deaf community so far?
It's been great. I've met heaps of new people. I've been involved in a whole new culture and community. I've got new family even. I've met really, really lovely people that I just love to pieces now.
Tēnā koe, Casey. Ngā mihi nui ki a koe. Thank you.
Now, we go to the Sign Language Interpreters of New Zealand Conference.
Kia ora koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou katoa. As you see in the background, we're here at Ōrākei Marae for a 3-day hui. Sign language interpreters from all over Aotearoa coming here for hui. Kia ora koutou.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Curtis and I'm President of the Sign Language Interpreters Association of New Zealand, and we are about to have our annual conference at Ōrākei Marae in Auckland. So the Sign Language Interpreters Association of New Zealand started in the late 90s, and as part of professional development for interpreters, we run an annual conference which is open to all interpreters throughout New Zealand attending. At those conferences we have lectures and presentations and workshops to improve our interpreters' practice. This year at the Marae, we're aiming for cultural competency and for interpreters to be comfortable in a Māori setting and to learn a few Māori concept signs, hopefully some waiata and karakia as well, both in te reo and in sign language. So that's the purpose of having the conference here. It's the first time we've had a conference on a marae. So it's really exciting for us, and I think it's really exciting for the Māori deaf community, and we've had a lot of really great support from them to run this event, and that's really exciting.
Now, another sign language lesson.
Time. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, half past, 1:45, 1:15, seconds, minutes, hours, morning, afternoon, midnight, midday, what time is it now? What time is your lunch break? Your lunch break is at 12? Mine too. Let's go to lunch. I finish work in an hour, at 4 o'clock. This morning I started work late, at 10 o'clock. My mother's coming to visit today at about midday. It's 4:45. Time to pack up. Want to know how or where to book an interpreter? Have a look at the iSign website. Also, if you need something translated from written English to sign language, check out Seaflow website.
If you want to study to become a fully qualified interpreter, first stop is to go to your local sign language night classes and then on to university, study at AUT for a 3-year program in order to graduate.
New Zealand has a lot of interpreters, but some of the time there is more work than interpreters available. So if you are interested in becoming an interpreter, the first step is to learn New Zealand Sign Language. We would really like to see more trilingual interpreters that know English, te reo and sign language. Thank you for watching Sign High. Our last episode is next week, so don't miss out. Bye!
Kia ora.